Most of the boaters think I'm crazy or they think I'm in trouble. Mostly they think I'm in trouble and they will come over and try to rescue me. And I've had boats come from a great distance away who've spotted me and have sailed up and been standing at the rail with life-saving equipment and yelling and saying, "There she is, Joe, let's throw the equipment." And at which point I say I'm practicing my sport, and I thank them. I always say thank you so much for thinking of me and wondering if I was in trouble, because someday I may need you.
Susan Chaplin has crossed some of the West Indies' biggest channels, propelled solely by the muscles in her arms and back, using a 50-pound paddleboard as a boat. This fall, 60-year-old Susan Chaplin will attempt to be the first person in history to paddleboard one of the most treacherous bodies of water in the world, the St. Vincent Channel. Susan Chaplin's goal is to reach all the islands in the West Indies by paddleboard. She's paddled between all 60 islands in the British Virgin Islands, crossed from St. Vincent to Grenada, connected all islands in the Turks and Caicos archipelago, paddled the Exumas to Nassau, trekked from Long Island to the Gementos, crossed from Martinique to Dominica and Guadeloupe, and navigated the rough, open ocean waters between St. Lucia and Martinique. Her next challenge is the most dangerous passage in the West Indies, the St. Vincent Channel between St. Lucia and St. Vincent.
The St. Vincent Channel is the hardest and longest of the windward channels.
It's a treacherous area. That swell is coming all the way across the Atlantic, the wind, the breeze, and everything. That's where all the hurricanes start up. So I know it's not a nice area.
It's difficult because the winds are stronger there for some reason than any place else. The swells are larger, and it is a place that many people have gotten into trouble.
You're dealing with a lot of big area of water that can get real nasty.
In 1997, Aragorn Dick Reed and a team of islanders attempted to sail these same waters in a hand-carved canoe, a much larger craft. They learned just how treacherous these windward island channels can be.
We were actually a little bit overconfident with our boat, and a big squall comes through, and we hadn't sheered down, we hadn't faced it like we should have done, and didn't realize how mean it was, and so we capsized it.
My worst experience with ocean conditions happened in the Exumas. I was caught in between the breaking waves of the outgoing current and the incoming very giant waves that were coming in from the open ocean. I was knocked off my board. I couldn't climb back on. The only thing I could do was steadily swim myself to the side of the current, to an eddy. And then I had no idea if I was going to be able to land on the windward side, on which a very heavy swell was breaking, or if I had to wait for 6 hours for the tide to change. That was a very scary experience. I was worried about being battered on the shore by the breaking waves.
She wanted to touch all islands or rocks on the BVI, and I thought, you know, she's crazy. And some of them are just little rocks out in the middle of the ocean, and she's climbing up onto these rocks to achieve her goal, and waves knocking her down, and she just paddled 15 miles and then getting on a rock and climbing up. It's pretty amazing what she's done.
On your own, you've got to be definitely very self-contained, self-motivated, and self-reliant. And that's one of the biggest things about Susan's adventures, I think, is that she can focus her mind to just get these things done, you know. Whenever I see Susan, she's on the move. Whether she's bicycling or running or on a paddleboard or swimming or whatever. I mean, it's like a total life focus, you know. And that's something that, yeah, I really admire in athletes of her quality.
Well, her weekly 20-mile paddle is pretty amazing. It's on the Atlantic side of the islands, so Susan is paddling up into this swell and wind, you know, 4, 6 foot, 10-foot waves, sometimes even bigger.
In rough water, I have a leash, keeps me together with my craft, and then in here I keep like sports bars and stuff, and I carry my credentials in here, my passport, my money, and everything that I don't want to go down with the ship, even though I might go down without the ship. Maybe it wouldn't do me any good to stab the shark, but at least I've got something to do it with. I carry on my back also a VHF radio and a cell phone. Here's my GPS. That's about it for the board. It's just a very simple, basic craft.
It's not just the wind and the waves, there's a lot of other elements out there. You have the fish elements, the sharks, the whales, the dolphins, and the recreational boats that are out there. And they're not looking for this lone paddleboarder out there in the middle of the ocean.
A fish bit my hand. It was a fish with some definitely very strong jaws, and it took my hand down to the bone. I've had some terrifying experiences with large ferries and cargo boats. Every time I tried to paddle out of the way, it seemed mysteriously that I was on a collision course with it. So the only thing that I could do was wait. I thought, well, if I sit and wait and until it's almost right on top of me, I'll know which direction to paddle. And that's what I actually did.
What Susan's doing is a symbolic thing as well as just a physical achievement. You know, the whole thing with the Caribbean islands since, you know, on a political level and everything else, that we've been isolated. We were much more connected. So, I mean, what Susan's doing is a symbolic way of bringing together what is naturally one big archipelago. That's what I think is good about what she's doing.
There is a real feeling of confluence with nature and the ocean. And there's a real feeling of losing oneself in a bigger purpose or an endeavor. There's a feeling of freedom that I have not felt in any other sport.
You know, it's not a question of, you know, like we're mad crazy. We know what we're doing. Susan's a specialist in her skill, you know, and she's trained for plenty of years to be able to perform these crossings.
I know Susan not only as a paddleboarder, but as a friend. And she's a great surfer, she's a great person, and what she has done with her life, everybody has to admire.
The St. Vincent Channel will be the 8th West Indies crossing Susan has attempted, and this time there are no guarantees.
I don't know really what the conditions will be when I'm mid-channel, say. But all I know is it's got big water, big weather situations, big winds, and it's very unpredictable. So I'm hoping for the best.
Knowing there are sharks, dangerous currents, and waves powerful enough to capsize large boats, 60-year-old Susan Chaplin will take on the St. Vincent Channel alone.